Pacific Summit ends with no communique as China, U.S. differ. Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. An acrimonious meeting of world leaders in Papua New Guinea failed to agree Sunday on a final communique, highlighting widening divisions between global powers the U.S. and China. The 21 nations at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Port Moresby struggled to bridge differences on the role of the World Trade Organization, which governs international trade. A statement was to be issued instead by the meeting's chair, Papua New Guinea's Prime Minister Peter O'Neill. The entire world is worried about tensions between China and the U.S., O'Neill told a mob of reporters that descended on him after he confirmed there was no communique from leaders. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said there were differences between several nations, including China and the U.S. Draft versions of the communique seen by the Associated Press showed the U.S. wanted strong language against unfair trade practices that it accuses of China. China, meanwhile, wanted a reaffirmation of opposition to protectionism and unilateralism it says the U.S. is engaging in. I don't think it will come as a huge surprise that there are differing visions on particular elements in regard to trade and those prevented there from being a full consensus on the communique, Trudeau said. The two-day summit was punctuated by acrimony and underlined a rising rivalry between China and the West for influence in the usually neglected South Pacific. China is a relative newcomer to providing aid, and its loan-heavy, no-strings-attached approach has unsettled Western nations that have been the mainstay donors to developing nations and often use aid to nudge nations towards reforms. Vice President Mike Pence and Chinese President Xi Jinping traded barbs in speeches on Saturday. Pence professed respect for Xi and China but also harshly criticized the world's number 2 economy for intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers and unfair trading practices. The U.S. has this year imposed additional tariffs on $250 billion of Chinese goods and Beijing has retaliated with its own tariffs on U.S. products. The world, according to Xi's speech, is facing a choice between cooperation and confrontation as protectionism and unilateralism grows. He said the rules of global institutions set up after World War II such as the World Trade Organization should not be bent for selfish agendas. Pence told reporters that during the weekend he had 2 candid conversations with Xi, who is expected to meet President Donald Trump at a Group of 20 summit at the end of this month in Buenos Aires. There are differences today. They begin with trade practices, with tariffs and quotas, forced technology transfers, the theft of intellectual property. It goes beyond that to freedom of navigation in the seas, concerns about human rights, Pence said. The U.S. is interested in a better relationship but there has to be change from China's side, Pence said he told Xi, who responded that dialogue is important. China's foreign ministry rejected the U.S. criticism that it was leading other developing nations into debt bondage. The assistance provided by China has been warmly welcomed by our partners in this region and beyond, Wang Xiaolong, a foreign ministry official, told the news conference. No country either in this region or in other regions has fallen into a so-called debt trap because of its cooperation with China. Give me one example, he said. In Port Moresby, the impact of China's aid and loans is highly visible. But the U.S. and allies are countering with efforts to finance infrastructure in Papua New Guinea and other island states. The U.S. has also said it will be involved in ally Australia's plan to develop a naval base with Papua New Guinea. On Sunday, the U.S., New Zealand, Japan and Australia said they'd work with Papua New Guinea's government to bring electricity to 70% of its people by 2030. Less than 20% have a reliable electricity supply. The commitment of the United States of America to this region of the world has never been stronger, Pence said at a signing ceremony. A separate statement from his office said other countries are welcome to join the electrification initiative provided they support the U.S. vision of a free and open Pacific. China, meanwhile, has promised $4 billion of finance to build the first national road network in Papua New Guinea, among the least urbanized countries in the world.